Hey folks, this is Joe with palmettolandbuyers.com, and I want to go over an article that I recently wrote on our website, palmettolandbuyers.com, that talks about how you can go into purchasing your first rental here in South Carolina. When you first get into real estate investing, or you start thinking about real estate investing, probably one of the first strategies that comes to mind, just because it's so common, is purchasing rentals, right? Because we've either rented property in the past from someone, or there's always a lot of talk about renting. It's just part of our day-to-day lives. So naturally, when you start considering, hey, I really want to start investing, this is something that I'd like to try and see if it's something that I'd be interested in, rentals is kind of where you first land. And the process for acquiring rentals, it's 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 been established, right? There are specific steps that you can take to acquiring rental in the traditional way, just like there are specific steps that a first-time home buyer would take. There's going to be a list of specific steps for a first-time investor looking to acquire a rental property that they could take. And so if you go to the blog on palmettolandbuyers.com, you can see there all the steps that I've listed, but we're going to go through that here today on this video. All right, so here are the things to consider when you're ready to buy. Okay, the first thing is, do you have the finances set up? Have you applied for a loan? Have you checked your credit score? Do you have 20% to put as a down payment? Okay, so you need to consider these things before you start any actual looking, or before you start visiting property. Those are the fun things, right? You want to go to houses, you want to look at the houses, you want to kind of daydream and fantasize about, oh wow, the potential here, I can charge X amount. But before you can do any of that, and so that you don't waste your time, you don't waste a professional's time, or like a real estate agent if they're showing you the property, you know, do the financial due diligence on yourself. Do you have a credit? What's your credit score, and is it good enough to apply for a loan? Do you have 20% of the purchase price? So think about your budget. Are you going to buy a $200,000 house? If you need 20%, well, that's 40 grand. If you're buying a $100,000 house, 20%, right? 20 grand. And if you're buying a $50,000 house, then 20% is 10 grand. So do you have at least 20%, if not more, that you can put towards a down payment? Okay? So are your finances in order? That's number one. Number two is set your limits. Okay? Know what you can afford to spend. You don't want to compromise here. You want to approach this rental like a business person would approach any business. You set a budget. Do not exceed that budget. Try and maintain it. If you set a target of 100, because after crunching your numbers, after doing your finances, you figured out that, well, 100 is really what I can afford, okay, then go for 100. Don't bump it up to 120 or 150 and say, well, look, we can sacrifice and make it work. Because what could happen, and ultimately what does happen, is you're gonna hit turbulence along the way, right? Just like any business, you're gonna run into some rough patches where the property might sit vacant, or if you're gonna do a short-term rental, you're not getting bookings on Airbnb like you expected, or there's a slowdown in the market. So there could be various things that happen along the way, like a repair that needs to be made, or the AC breaks, or some windows break, whatever the case may be. But things will occur where you didn't plan for it, because you can't plan for everything, right? I know some of us, and I get into the habit sometimes where I want to plan, I want to plan, I want to plan, and it's good to have a plan, but a plan isn't going to manifest itself the way that you structured it. And so things are going to happen that you didn't account for. And it's the same with a rental, whether it be long term or short term. Things are going to happen. The roof's going to start leaking, right? Or the energy bill is going to be higher than you expected. It's happened to me, both of those. So, so set your limit. Think conservative. Worst case scenario, right? Worst case scenario, all goes to shit. I can still afford this place. That's the better strategy, okay? Research. Number 3, so research. You're going to want to talk to investors. So go to like local real estate events. REI Live in Columbia is a good event. There's various other events across the state. They have some in Charleston and Greenville, not so much in the other towns, but those are your kind of your big 3 metropolitan areas. So in the low country, Charleston, you're going to find some events there. In Columbia, REI Live is one that I know of. There's probably others. And that's where real estate investors go and meet and talk. And then in the upstate, in Greenville, you're going to have some there as well. You can go to meetup.com, Eventbrite, and you can find those different venues where you can then start to network with folks, start to talk to real estate investors. You can reach out to me. Okay, my number is 803-201-9137. If you're considering a long-term rental or a short-term rental, I'd love to talk to you and give you some advice. Happens all the time. People reach out to you from bigger pockets. So if you haven't gone to biggerpockets.com, that would be a great source of information. There are other real estate investor friendly or investor focused websites online. Bigger Pockets, which I just mentioned, is probably one of the bigger ones and one of the more better known ones. I've gone on there a lot of times. Look at the forum. I've posted on the forum. It's really a great way to do some research and understand, hey, what do investors have to say about this specific deal, or what's going on in the market? Is this a good? So you can start to ask questions. Reaching out to a real estate professional, other than an investor, reaching out to some agents. An agent could be it's kind of a tricky area, right? Because an agent is going to want to pick you up as a client. They're going to want to lock you in and be a buyer's agent. But hey, you can say, hey, pump the brakes there. I'd like to have dialogue. I'd like to have conversation with you, and over time, maybe we can build some kind of an arrangement where you're giving me leads and I give you some business, but let's just talk about the market for now, right? And you can get a lot of good market trends from an agent. They have access to the MLS, and so they can tell you, hey, here's how many listings are open in the market. Here's how many closings we had this month. Here's how many new listings we had this month. And they can just give you a plethora of data because they have access to the MLS. And the MLS is, more and more over the years, I think it's becoming less and less of a, what's the word I'm looking for? The MLS is less of like this source of knowledge. There still is a lot of information in the MLS, but you don't have to depend on it as much. There are other markets out there now, right? It used to be that the MLS was the only market in town, and so all buyers and sellers had to transact through the MLS. It's not the case anymore. You got Zillow, Trulia, Facebook Marketplace, right? There are all these other venues where people are buying and selling now. So the MLS, again, is not the end-all be-all, but still a lot of good information in there. So making relationships, establishing those with real estate agents can be impactful. A buying course, so you could take that as well, and there are various courses online that you can pay for. I don't offer any courses. I haven't paid for any real estate courses in the past, but you can buy one. I mean, I get hit up on Facebook all the time advertising for how to find leads, how to find buyers, how to buy. It keeps going and going and going. But yes, that is an option for you. All right, number 4, take notes. So you're going to want to take detailed notes of each property you see. So now at this point, we're in the actual boots on the ground looking at places that we're considering buying. Okay, so we want to take detailed notes of each and every property that we see. We we want to be able to, like at the end of the day, if we go to 5 different properties, we got property 1 on Main Street, property 2 on Johnson Street, property 3, whatever, right? You got all these 5 properties. You want to be able to compare bathrooms. You want to be able to compare how many rooms, how many bathrooms, what was the price, what variables were different among the different properties. Was one on an acre? The other one was on 5 acres. Was one in the country, one in the city? Did one have a pool? Did one have a sauna? Right? So you're going to want to list all these out, because what'll happen is if you're looking at 5, 6, 7, 10 properties in a day, things start to blend together, right? Which one was that? You're going to start asking, like, which one was the house with the elevator in it? Which one was the house that had that pretty, whatever in the backyard, right? So you're going to want to you're going to want to take notes so that you can then start to recall all these different things that you experienced, that you saw at all these different houses. So that is going to be critical when you're looking at a lot of houses. All right, number 5, hire professional help. Okay, so as a first-time investor, it would be good to either have a mentor, have a coach, or a real estate agent that is experienced with not just buying and selling houses, but working with real estate investors. Okay, someone that can, take you by the hand and walk you through the process. As far as having a mentor and a coach, it can be free or paid, because a lot of these courses that you buy, they offer these coaching programs at an additional cost, and you can pay for those. Okay, and there is benefit in those, because these gurus, there's benefit in as much as the person that you've hired is a legit coach and has done the business and knows the process, and you'd even want it that person is legit in the market that you're buying. Now, when you're looking at real estate from a national level, there are similarities in the way that a transaction goes, in that the negotiation and hiring an attorney or a closing company, but there are little specifics to each market, these particular things in the way you do things that make every single state different. And so I know this because I lived in Florida for a long time. I was a real estate agent in Florida, and so I was familiar with the Florida process. And then when I came to South Carolina, there were some similarities, but there were a ton of differences as well. So, for example, big difference that I didn't know, but coming from Florida, when you do a closing, you hire a title company, and a title company will do a title search, and they'll do the entire closing. Well, in South Carolina, closings can only be done by a licensed and practicing real estate attorney. They need to do a closing. It's an attorney closing state, okay? And that's a difference, because some states have that, some other states don't have that. So having a professional that can kind of walk you and navigate you through these processes can be beneficial. A coach can be beneficial. And a mentor, whether they're free, somebody you just kind of build a relationship with, which I would say is probably better, or a coach that you have to pay for, which, hey, if you don't have access to someone, well, then this is a good alternative, right? I'll pay for it, and it'll fast track you, right? Because if you've paid for a coach that's got this knowledge, they can then insert that knowledge into your brain. It gets it there faster, gets you there faster. That's a benefit. Or you can always hire a real estate agent. The thing with the agent is you're always going to have in your mind, I know that they're supposed to have this fiduciary relationship, but you're always going to have in your mind the fact that this person is motivated by the transaction, right? They want to sell you that house. Like the car salesperson wants to sell you that car, okay? They know that this purchase is probably going to be your only purchase because most people only buy one or two places. And they're not so much interested in the repeat customer. Some are, but sometimes they're not, right? And that's why I would say when you're hiring this real estate professional, make sure that they're investor friendly. Talk to them, do some research, read some books about investments, get that knowledge, and then have a conversation with your real estate agent about investing and bring up some of that jargon. And if they're like looking at you like deer stuck in a headlight, like what are you even talking about? That should be a red flag. You want somebody that knows the business, knows the jargon, and like I said, is going to be able to, they're going to treat it like, look, this is an investor I'm working with. Investors buy multiple houses, and so it is in the best interest of the real estate agent / investor's agent to build relationships, find good deals so the investor can make money, buy another deal, and in turn satisfy the real estate agent's self-interest of growing their pockets fatter, right? That is, at the end of the day, that's the important thing. All right. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, buy below market value. This is critical, right? For obvious reasons. Because look, market value is, I can have an opinion of market value. You, as the buyer or the seller, might have your own opinion of market value. An appraiser has their opinion. It's a professional opinion of market value. Real estate agent will have an opinion of market value. Okay? Market value is not a price tag. It's not set in stone. Houses out in the market aren't like when you go to the grocery store and it's the loaf of bread costs $2.99 and that's a sticker on the price and you can't haggle it. That's market value, right? That's the retail price. Market value is subjective. Now, if you are, and the way to do this is you want to, the way you determine market value is you want to be methodical. You want to look at a couple different things. So you want to look at comparable sales in the immediate area of the subject property being the property you're considering buying. So you want to look at comparable sales in the immediate area. So what's the immediate area? 1 mile is too far. Half a mile is pushing it. Okay? So if the subject property is a mile from the property that you're buying, don't use that as a comp. That's trash. That's too far. You could have driven through a good neighborhood, a bad neighborhood, and another good neighborhood in a mile. I mean, think about those houses where across the train tracks, it's a shit show. Okay, so a mile away is too far. Half a mile, I would say, is probably still too far. You want to be in that, honestly, you want to be in like a quarter of a mile. And you want to go drive the neighborhood and just make sure that it isn't like the next street over. From where you're buying, the next street over is a bad neighborhood. Or it's a shitty neighborhood. Because that happens. You might be looking at all these houses in this neighborhood and you're like, damn, these are all $200,000 houses. And this property is like so close and it's only 75 grand. Oh, this is a deal. But then you go there and you're saying, well, it's a whole different world, right? Over there is nice. Over here is third world country. You know, it's like a crack show over here. That happens. So you want to be methodical. You want to get, 2 or 3 recent within 6 months, year max. If there isn't, then you have to go further, right? As far as years, that's important. But really, I would say location is the most important, that radius. So 6 months, quarter mile distance max, comparable sales. Sales are always going to be more important than active listings. But you also want to look at your active listings and you use that same criteria. What's currently being sold in the area, or what's currently up for sale in the area that's within a quarter mile. And, and then you can, for these active listings, what you can do is you can look at days on market. So you might have a listing that is $300,000 in, right next door. And you might say, damn, the house I'm about to buy is 75 grand. The house next to it is 300 grand. This is a good buy, but it may not be. That seller may be unrealistic. Okay? That's why comparable sales are always going to be king. Why they're the best source of knowledge. Because comparable sales, those actually sold. Money was transacted. Money exchanged hands. You can take that to the bank. Those happened. A listing, an active listing, is a wish. So if the seller's unreasonable, on cloud nine, thinks that their property is the best thing in the world, and they have it super overpriced, it isn't gonna sell, right? So look at days on market, because if it's been on there for 300 days, almost a year, this listing is trash. You can't take it serious, okay? But yeah, I would say those two things: proximity to the subject property, ensuring that it's in the right neighborhood, and the sale date are going to be important factors when determining market value. Now, there's other things that you can take into consideration. In my opinion, they're important, but they're not going to sway price as much as location would. Is going to be, how many bedrooms. This house has the subject house has 2 bedrooms. These comparable sales have 3 bedrooms, right? And then you can start to add or subtract money, right, or price, or the market price from the property using those variables. How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, overall condition of the property. Those, again, they have an influence, but they're not going to sway the price as much as location is. So pay the most attention to location. That if you can get location, you can get some comp sales, you can get close, okay? Now, all that to say, why buy below market value? Determine market value, buy it underneath market value. Why? Because then you've got built-in equity. If the market value for the property is estimated close to 100 grand and you buy it for $75,000, you've literally made 25 grand. You can turn around and sell that property on the market that day. Not sell it. You can list it that day for 100 grand and hopefully find a buyer within 30 to 60 days, right? That's why you want to buy below market value. You've got the built-in equity. It gives you room to maneuver. It's incredibly important if you are a new real estate investor. You're going to make mistakes, and those mistakes are going to come with a price tag. You're going to hire a wrong contractor. You're going to make an incorrect repair. You're going to buy stuff from Home Depot that you thought you needed and you didn't need, right? There's going to be things that you're going to do as a new investor. It's part of the learning process. And just take that for what it is. These are lessons that you're going to learn, and some of these lessons are going to cost you money. And that's just part of the process. And that's fine, okay? It happens to it's happened to me. It's happened to everybody. Trust me, it happened to me. I purchased the property, paid 15 grand for it cash, and there ended up being a $36,000 lien on the property because the person I bought it from had an accident. Okay? That's pretty crazy. All right, so shifting gears. You're going to want to calculate the ROI, so the return on investment. Now, the ROI is your net profit divided by the amount that you have invested. And the percentage is expressed as a ratio. So, having the ROI is important. Knowing these numbers, I'm going to be honest with you. I included it on this blog just because I know that if you're going to be about your numbers, you want to know your ROI. I'm buying properties, and I know it's going to be making me money. I know it's going to make me money because if I buy a property for 20 grand and I'm selling it for 40, I know I've made money. And so I'm not so focused on the numbers. It's important, though, to focus on the numbers if you're cutting it close. If you're getting a deal but it isn't a grand slam, you really want to sit down, buckle down, and get solid on the numbers. That is important. I will say that. Now, folks, we covered a lot of good best practices here. This is what you should do when you get ready to buy. If you need help finding property and you're a real estate investor starting out, feel free to reach out. I'm not the best. I don't have all the answers, but I will do my best to help you and guide you for free. Just call me. We can chat. I'd love to do a podcast with some new investors. So if you're a new investor, you're getting in, I'd love to sit down and chat and just kind of record the conversation to see where your state of mind is, to see what it's like, as a new guy or a new girl jumping into the business. What are you thinking about? What are you going through? What are your priorities? Nonetheless, folks, thank you so much for tuning in, for watching this or listening to this. If you're listening on the podcast, my name is Joe Ortiz, palmettolandbuyers.com. Again, I can't stress it. We are the premier land buyers here in South Carolina. If you've got land that you want to sell quickly, I'm talking about you call me today, we close tomorrow. Hit me up. I've got cash to close. I've got the resources to do what needs to be done to get the deed prepared, to do the research, and I can close tomorrow. Call me up. I'm interested in buying your property. 803-201-9137. That's 803-201-9137, palmettolandbuyers.com. Thank you so much. Have a great day.